When I first moved into the neighborhood, I expected the usual growing pains, adjusting to a new place, meeting neighbors, learning the unwritten community rules, and figuring out when trash pickup happened. What I didn't expect was a self-appointed HOA dictator named Karen, who seemed to think she had final say over everyone's lives. From the moment I moved in, it was clear she had a problem with me. Why? I had no clue. Maybe she didn't like new homeowners who didn't bow to her authority, or maybe she'd been waiting for someone to challenge her rule, and unknowingly, I had become that person. It started small. Passive-aggressive notes on my door. Your lawn isn't trimmed to neighborhood standards. Your trash bins are 1 inch too far from the curb. Your porch light is too bright at night. Every week it was something new, a complaint, a warning, an imaginary infraction. But I played along at first. I trimmed the lawn, moved the bins, dimmed the light. None of it worked. Because Karen had made up her mind. I didn't belong here. Then came the real turning point. On a Tuesday morning, I opened my mailbox to find an official-looking envelope with the HOA logo. I expected another petty warning. Instead, I found an eviction notice. Dear homeowner, after careful review, the HOA has determined that your property does not align with the aesthetic values of our community. Due to multiple infractions, we have initiated the process to have you removed. You have 30 days to vacate the premises or face legal action. I actually laughed. I owned my home. There was no way the HOA could evict me. But then I saw the final line. Failure to comply may result in foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure? That wasn't an empty threat. Some HOAs abuse power by stacking fines and penalties until people are forced to sell. But Karen didn't know something very important. Owned the house she was living in. Yep, Karen, my HOA nemesis, wasn't a homeowner. She was a renter. And as fate would have it, through a series of investment purchases years ago, I was her landlord. I pulled up my property management files. There it was, Karen's lease agreement, signed, dated, with my name as owner. She had no clue the person she was trying to evict actually owned her house. That's when I knew this wasn't going to end with a letter. It had to be done face to face. That afternoon, I walked over to my property, Karen's house. She was outside, scolding some poor neighbor about their fence being half an inch too high. She turned to me, smug. I assume you got the notice, she said, arms crossed. I smiled. Oh, I got it. And I have a response. I pulled out a termination of lease agreement and handed it to her. She scanned it, her smirk fading. This is a joke. You can't do this. Oh, but I can, I said. You violated multiple clauses in your lease. Harassing other residents? Check. Unauthorized modifications? Like those HOA signs you plastered? Check. Trying to evict the property owner? Big check. She stood frozen. You wouldn't dare. I leaned in. Step down from your little HOA throne, or step out of my house. Either way, your reign is over. She went pale. Her hands trembled as she clutched the papers. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked away, leaving her holding her own eviction notice. But that was just the beginning. The very next morning, I received an email from the HOA. Guess who? Subject: illegal eviction notice, violation of HOA bylaws. I opened it and laughed out loud. Karen was trying to fight back again. Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that you have engaged in unauthorized eviction proceedings. HOA rules strictly prohibit retaliatory actions against residents. Seriously? She was trying to use the HOA to protect herself from her own landlord. I replied, Karen is not a homeowner. She is my tenant. I have terminated her lease in accordance with state housing laws. The HOA has no authority over this matter. Further interference will be considered harassment. I hit send. Karen had run out of rules to twist. But But just when I thought it was over, the doorbell rang. 2 police officers stood at my door. Karen was in denial. After I handed her the lease termination in person, on her own porch, of the house I owned, she still acted like she had the upper hand. She walked around the neighborhood like she was still queen of the HOA, still barking at neighbors about fence height violations and porch decor infractions. But the clock was ticking. I had filed the formal eviction with the court, and she had 30 days to vacate. And unlike the HOA rules she abused so freely, this wasn't up for debate. Still, Karen did what Karen does best. She doubled down. First came the harassment complaint she filed against me. She told the police I was stalking her, intimidating her, that I forged the lease termination. Too bad I had every document on record, signed, time-stamped, legally bulletproof. The officer reviewing the case practically apologized to me for having to waste my time. Then she tried to rally the HOA again. I got an email titled, "Illegal Eviction Proceedings, Community Rules Violation." I laughed. They threatened me with fines, with further action, warning me that removing a resident without HOA oversight was unacceptable. So I replied, copy-pasting the words straight from my property deed. Karen is not a resident, she is a tenant. And I am her landlord. Her lease has been terminated per state law, and unless the HOA has somehow been granted judicial power by the Supreme Court, I suggest you stay out of it. I signed off with, "Best regards, your favorite landlord." Mic drop. But Karen wasn't done. She called the police again. This time, I opened my front door to find 2 officers standing on my porch. "Sir," one of them said, "we've received another complaint from Miss Karen. She claims you're attempting an unlawful eviction and using threats to force her out." I sighed and gestured for them to come in. "I've got receipts," I said. I showed them the lease agreement, the legal termination notice, the court filing, even the HOA's misguided email. One officer read through everything, then looked at me and said, "This is solid. She's got no case. Honestly, this happens more than you'd think." He shook his head, adding, "People think HOA rules are law. They're not." Before they left, I watched them walk across the street to Karen's door. I couldn't hear much, but I caught one beautiful line from the officer. "Ma'am, this is a civil issue. Don't call us again unless someone's bleeding." It was the first crack in her carefully constructed kingdom. But it wasn't the last, because then came the best day of all, eviction day. The sheriff's department showed up at 10 a.m. 2 deputies stepped out of their car with a clipboard, ready to officially remove Karen from the property. My property. Karen opened the door, still trying to put on her smug queen face. One of the officers said, "Ma'am, we're here to execute a court-ordered eviction. You have 15 minutes to vacate. Any property left behind will be removed." Karen's voice shot up an octave. "This is my home. You can't do this." But the deputy simply pointed to me across the street and said, "No, ma'am. This is his home. You are trespassing." That's when it hit her. This wasn't just a feud. This wasn't a game. This was real. And she had lost, her face twisted with desperation. She looked at me, voice cracking. "You don't have to do this. We can work something out." I cut her off. "You tried to evict me from my own house, Karen. You called the police. You filed bogus complaints. You tried to ruin my life over porch lights and trash bins. And now you want a deal?" No. I wasn't angry. I was calm. Too calm. That's how she knew it was over. She stormed back inside, and that's when we all heard the crash. Picture frames shattered. Cabinets slammed. She knocked a chair over. I half expected her to start ripping drywall off the studs. One officer turned to me. "Would you like to press charges for destruction of property?" I thought for a moment. Tempting. So tempting. But I just shook my head. Only if she breaks something expensive. 15 minutes later, she emerged dragging a single suitcase like a defeated villain in the final scene of a drama she wrote herself. She looked at me, red-faced, trembling, but said nothing. There was nothing left to say. She got into her car and sped away. Just as the locks were changed behind her, Karen was gone. The nightmare of the neighborhood, the self-proclaimed OA Queen, had finally been dethroned. The next morning, my inbox pinged. Dear homeowner, due to recent vacancies, there's now an open seat on the HOA board. As a valued member of our community, we'd like to invite you to apply. I laughed out loud. I had no intention of joining the HOA, but I smiled at the thought that somewhere, Karen was screaming into a throw pillow, furious, humiliated, evicted, and me, I was finally home. In peace.